Thanks for joining us. I am your host, Joyce Costigan, and with me always is Willie Costigan, and this is Behind the Blue New York, a podcast for the lighter side of law enforcement. Today we will be talking with John Costigan, which makes it a family affair since Willie and John are brothers. John is a retired lieutenant from NYPD, and he served in the 80s, which, if you were around back then, was one of the craziest times in law enforcement in the city of New York. He graduated the academy class and right out of the gate was put on a task force. He didn't even have any time for field training. John was thrown in feet first, and his time was a roller coaster of crazy, none of which was ever boring. And he still holds the department in high regard when reminiscing about his glory days on the job, which will most likely be presented in a multi-episode series because he's got a million stories to tell. So without further delay, let's meet John Costigan. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Blue, New York. Enjoying the lighter side of law enforcement. With us today, we have a very special guest, and who happens to be my brother-in-law. This is John Costigan. He's a retired lieutenant from the NYPD, and he's going to tell us what life was like in a very, in my opinion, a very tumultuous time, John, because I think the 80s were pretty rock and roll. Right.
It was the absolute best time to be a cop in New York City. I'm not kidding. It was the ultimate time to become a cop.
I bet.
No, because it was such a when we got hired in 82, I started in
that's when you joined the academy? 82?
Yes. Mm-hmm. But the city was just coming out of it almost went bankrupt 3 or 4 years before. They had laid off cops.
Under what mayor?
Beam was there.
Beam was there, I think, when I got hired.
Dinkins?
This is when Ford said to the city, remember, drop dead?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the city was, it was absolutely horrible. So now the city started hiring. So in my class was 3,000 guys. When we arrived at the precinct, these guys were like holding down the fort for the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. And a lot of them were like Vietnam vets.
Right.
They were just grizzled.
They got the layoffs.
They were guys that had been laid off. They were just battling the race riots in the 60s and the 70s. It was a tumultuous time before we got there. And then you had this huge influx of 3,000 20-something-year-olds come bopping in. Hey, it was just interesting. Yeah, it was a really great time.
And where did you come? Like, did you come from just a regular high school job that
Joyce,
you had?
I just said this recently. Yes, a high school diploma. Somebody said, it was the worst decision I ever made, joining the police department. And I said to them, I don't know. I was 20 years old. I graduated high school. I bounced around a couple of different jobs, pumped gas. I was driving a truck. I go, and then I walked into an auditorium in Brooklyn one day, raised my right hand, and next thing I know, I got a salary, I got benefits, I got insurance, I got days off, I got vacation days, I've got union representation. I'm like, wow, this is like
and they give you a gun.
And a gun, and it was a fantastic job, and it was great.
But civil service wasn't looked on upon back then as it is now. Civil service is just, like it's just an okay job.
Well, you know what? I think it depends on where you came from because, I tell you, I had a story when I worked in narcotics for a short while, or like a year. And because of that, I had certain extra days off. So I was with a friend of mine back in the 80s, and he was working in private industry. And we were in Rockville Center, McQuaid's. And he says, for the first time, I'm going to make $100,000 this year, And back then, that's
that was huge.
Yes, $100,000 in 1983, 84.
Yeah.
So I'm standing, I go, I'm not even close to that, not even near it. I go, but I do have 48 days off this year. He's like, 48 days off? Who gets 48 days off? And I was like, well, I have vacation days, I have chart days, I have personal days. I go, not including sick time, because if I get sick, that's unlimited. I go, there's trade-offs, with the salary, but you get benefits and,
But when you're talking about that to your friends, do they even understand?
Oh, no, they do.
Yeah.
A lot of them do.
Yeah, I know a guy. So my hiring salary, 83, was like 18,911, something like that, right? And I was friends with a guy who went to work at Wall Street, and his Christmas bonus that year was $25,000. Yeah. And I said, well, I'm paid $19,000 to walk around Manhattan with a gun.
For 12 months a year.
What was your first unit out of the academy?
Well, see, because I graduated with that class, that big class,
yeah,
the city wasn't prepared to handle our class coming out into
Oh,
the
such an
precincts.
influx?
Oh yeah, no, they had to come up with these impromptu plans. So they created task force throughout the city. They already had established task force. Manhattan North, Manhattan South, Brooklyn North. So they had to establish new ones to feed us into NSU. Normally, you graduate and you go to an NSU, which is a Neighborhood Stabilization Unit, and it's a company. I didn't go to it, but maybe like 20 or 30 guys, and you have 2 or 3 field training officers who break them into the streets. So they couldn't handle it when we came out. So they took a certain number and put them into the FTUs. And then the rest, they just threw us into a task force. Okay, yeah, all right. And think about it. The city hadn't seen like foot posts in 10, 15 years. And all of a sudden, the average, I think there was like 3,000 in my class. So the average precinct got like, and each precinct was an average. But if you average it out, it was 40 new cops to a precinct. But some precincts probably got 60 and 70 new cops, over a matter of 3 months. And the huge impact it had on those neighborhoods. So, yeah. So,
Well, I guess the residents must have been happy.
yeah, well, it was the beginning of a change, and it was a good time.
Then they pumped out classes every 6 months.
Yeah, that wasn't the end. Another 6 months, another 3,000 or 2,500.
Was this part of the commissioner's community policing
No,
overhaul?
this is way before. This is actually, it was coming out of the, like I said, coming out of the fiscal problems. And they just started, it wasn't just the city police. It was the transit police, the housing police, the New York City police, the New York City Fire Department, the transit system. Everybody was hiring, back.
What was the difference between you started in transit and then crossed over to?
Yes,
so what was the
immediately.
difference? Do you think?
Well, no, in transit at that time, hindsight, I maybe should have stayed, but transit was a much smaller department, and they were regulated to the transit system.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. They were merged over.
Years later.
Years
right.
later.
'Cause
Years.
I remember Kevin. So your brother Kevin started in transit.
I was with them. We were in the same class.
Right, but then you crossed over to NYPD,
Yes,
and
well,
Kevin
that was-
merged
Well, Kevin stayed in transit.
until.
Until it merged, but the merge wasn't until
Yeah, he was
like 10 years
he was
later.
sergeant or lieutenant.
Yeah, it was like
So
10.
did he have almost 20 years before he crossed?
Close. Probably
Yeah,
15.
probably 15 maybe.
Yeah. I know he wasn't happy. I know he
Oh,
was
no,
not
that's what I
happy
mean.
about
Transit
it,
was a
yeah.
very good department.
Yeah, because he regarded them as family.
Yeah.
And
They were
then
very, they
when
had
he-
a good network, too.
So he comes into a department of 30,000.
Yes,
It's like, where
yes.
am I?
Yeah.
I'm a number.
And I switched over. I started in transit in October. But this is what I mean. This is how it was hiring. Everybody was hiring. So you were getting letters from different agencies, and you were going to investigations for as many agencies
Right.
as you
Right.
can, waiting for which one will
Right?
call
Everybody
you.
wanted Willie.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Housing was that was a test, separate test.
Yes, you had to-
Troopers were tested. Nassau, Suffolk.
fire department, sanitation, all of these
Right.
things. So, and like I said, in us, 4 of us went to the police department.
Yeah.
One good friend down the street went to the police department. 2 friends went to the fire department. This is all like from the neighborhood, from the street. That's
Right.
where
Yeah, a
do
lot
you-
of
I
guys,
got a
yeah.
job, fire department. I got a job, police, and
Right.
and people from the town that you finally knew, all went to the police department, or over the years you find them and cross paths with them. And,
Yeah, the first day when you go into the academy and you go to the train station, you see guys.
Yes.
Oh, you're on? Yeah, I'm on. Everybody's in their blue uniform.
And it was good timing because the city was on a downward spiral even at that time. So, the 80s, and then crack came, which I said, thank God they had hired all these young cops, because when crack hit, then the city really took off it got really bad really fast. Yes.
Oh gosh. What was your field training like?
My field, no, I skipped field training because when I graduated the academy, I did well in the academy. So,
Well, number 1.
number 2.
Number 2.
And then like in the top 10 for shooting, so, which I'm more proud of.
Good
Out
for
of,
you.
yeah, like 3,000. Yeah, I had to go down for the finals. But all right, short story.
Yeah.
When I graduated, I won the Commissioner Devine First Deputy Commissioner's Award for excellence. So it was at Madison Square Garden. I had to go up and get his award, and I came back down and sat we were sitting in the front row. And after the ceremony, Commissioner Devine comes over and he goes, "Where are you going to?" He goes, "Come here." He goes, "I got my photographer. I want to take pictures, me and you." So he takes pictures, and then he goes, "Where are you going to?" I said, "Manhattan North Task Force." He goes, "Where do you want to go to?" I said, I have no idea. I said, I had
Really no clue.
Yeah, no, I said, I really don't know. He goes, all right, yeah. He goes, here's my phone number. He goes, when you decide where you want to go, you call me and let me know.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good. And actually, I'll give you even better. We left the Madison Square Garden. I was walking with my parents on 34th Street, And all of a sudden, the department car pulls up, and Commissioner Devine gets out. And he's like, "Is this your parents?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm Commissioner Devine. John won me award in my name. I told him I'll take care of him. He just has to let me know what he wants to do." And so I was like, "Oh, well, wow." It was nice of him, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he later became the police commissioner for one day.
Why? What happened?
No, he got diagnosed. It was a shame. He got diagnosed with terminal cancer. And
Oh, no.
I think it was Ed Koch that, as a favor to the family, made him commissioner for one day, like before Bratton came on, I think, when McGuire left. I'm not sure. But he
McGuire and then
Safer? No.
no
Kelly?
the guy, the helicopter.
Oh, Ben Ward.
Ben.
Oh, so yeah, but anyway, so they held off on installing the new police commissioner, and it made Commissioner Devine police. So if you look at the history of police commissioners, his name is there for
Yeah.
It was a nice thing.
I remember they were saying at that time, the rumor was that McGuire didn't want to shake hands with Ben Wood, so they stuck Devine in the
Get out
middle.
of here. No, I think it was a fan because so everybody told me Devine was a real cop's cop. He came up through the ranks, and he was like it's funny because when I went back to the academy after graduation, to clean up and the company instructors there. So he's like, I said, yeah. I go, Commissioner Devine asked me for whatever I want to do. He's like, tell him you want the bureau. What the hell? You got nothing to lose. He goes, all he can say is no. I was like, well, I don't know. I think that's a bridge too far.
So what ended up happening?
So anyway, what happened was I went to Manhattan North, which worked out of the 2-3 precinct, which was fantastic. It was Spanish Harlem. And it was
and you're how old?
I was 21.
21.
Yeah.
Were you doing at 8 p.m. to 4 a.m.? Was that the
No, well, we were the task force. Like, believe me, it was a bizarre thing because they didn't know what to do with us. So they just had us in groups. And this is what I love about the city police and the city of New York. I was there one evening shift. And we were on 116th Street, which is Spanish Harlem, which is fantastic. It's like loud, it's noisy, there's people out. It's, you know what I mean? It is activity and it gets crazy. And it gets crazy. And, it worked out overnight. So it would get really, really crazy. And then, halfway through the shift, they switched us down to 86th Street. And then Jackie Onassis comes walking by. And I'm like, where in the world would you work at a job where one day you got 4 hours sitting on 116th Street with Spanish Harlem, just eating it up. And then 4 hours later, you're sitting down watching Jackie Onassis walk by. I go, only in New York City. That happened.
Only in New York City.
Literally 30 blocks away. That's, that was the distance. We're still in the same precinct.
That is why I love the city.
Oh, I know. I still love the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So how many units over your career?
Oh, I don't know. But anyway, how I got out of Manhattan North was I was there for a while. Then I got a notification to call this number at headquarters. And I call, and it was a sergeant from the First Deputy Commissioner's office. He goes, hey, the commissioner wants to know, where the hell do you want to go? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, I have no clue. He goes, where do you live? I said, Oceanside. He goes, you're going to the 113 tomorrow morning. He goes, study for the test. He goes, the orders are going out right now.
What is that, Queens?
Queens, he says, it's busy. He goes, but it's close to home. He goes, just study for the next test.
Like JFK.
And what'd you think of that precinct as opposed to Manhattan?
Fantastic. Well, because I didn't get enough of Manhattan, so I was there for about a month, maybe even less. And then I got transferred to the 113. But when I got to the 113, I had skipped training. So basically I went right into the precinct, right in with the sectors. And this is what I'm talking about. They were so shorthanded. Yeah. It was a fantastic time to come walking in, And then so many young people came flooding in. I remember this one day we're working, and a call comes over like an assault in progress or something, and it was over by the airport. And in that precinct, it's all avenues and streets, numbers. 102nd Avenue, 141st Street, and Road, Drive, Avenue. So it gets complicated when you get around 101 or 101. So there was a call, but I remember we were racing to the call, and we screeched. The guy who's driving the car, I wasn't driving, he screeches to a stop at an intersection, and there's 4 police cars. We all came to the intersection, and everybody's got a map out in the car. I think it's over here. Yeah. All right, go, all right.
Oh, that's right. There is no GPS.
No, we had no GPS. No, you had maps.
Maps.
And you're trying to figure it out. And yeah.
Oh, John, that was a long time ago.
It was 40 years ago. Yeah. And that's why, and I want to emphasize that anything I talk about, I'm talking about 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Which the city was different, the department was different.
It's another planet.
Yeah, and it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I'm telling you, it was.
Yeah, you want to some this? I worked in Manhattan when I got out, and then in Midtown South, so in NSU 3. So I'm with the training officer one of the first days on the job, and this is where Vietnam guys, right, this guy was an old timer, and we get in the car. He's with 2 rookies, and he goes, "Hey, what do you guys want for lunch?" And I'm with this another new cop, John Young. And we go, whatever. He goes, "No, what do you want for lunch?" So I don't know. So he says, "Think about what you want for lunch." So he goes, "What do you want for lunch?" I said, "I'll have what you're having." He goes, "You're full of shit. You'll have what I'm having." He goes, "McDonald's, Burger King, that's your choices." I go, "McDonald's." All right, we go to McDonald's. We get for us. He goes to Smitty's Bar on 43rd Street.
I get loads.
Yeah, whoop, whoop. Goes in, comes out with a pastrami sandwich, 2 beers. He gets in the car. It's like, that was the difference. The old guys and the new guys.
Well, I'll tell you a perfect story. In Queens, there was a deli we would go to, and it was in 105 Pellegrino's. You got a sandwich and a soda for $1. Right? So any sandwich you wanted and any soda from the rack, it was $1. So you'd go to the back, order your sandwich, get it, and come up to the register, pay the $1. So I'm standing in line one time with an old timer next to me, and he starts laughing. I go, "Hey, John, what are you laughing about?" He goes, you young guys. He goes, "You think this is such a big deal? You're getting a sandwich and a soda for $1." He goes, "In the old days, you get a sandwich and a soda, and it'd be a $5 bill in the bottom of that bag." I was like, wow. That was with these are guys who were in the 60s.
Yeah.
It was when corruption. Nap Commission changed the police department immensely, and which led to a lot of problems later. Also,
Which at what time was that?
it was in the early 70s, and then you had the city going almost broke.
So that was Serpico's time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. These are cops came out of probably the 60s. They got
right.
hired.
So a lot. What happened was when we got on, a lot of the bosses had gone through the Knapp Commission times.
Oh.
And some of them had reputations for what they did back in Brooklyn,
yeah.
and
Well, not only that, it also it affected the way policing was done because, I tell these stories and I swear I think some cops don't even believe me. Back in those days, you'd have a foot post. There'd be a numbers spot on the foot post, and they had winning numbers in the front window.
Right.
Or there would be 2 doors down would be the nickel bag spot. It's like a fake bodega. There's 4 things on a counter, and there's a guy behind a bulletproof window, and he's just dealing nickel bags.
Right.
Because at that time, if you're a uniformed cop, you were not allowed to go into either one of those premises. You were not allowed to. It was forbidden. You'd be in deep trouble.
Why? What was the purpose?
Because of corruption from 10 years before.
Oh.
So, but the problem was, what happens, the neighbors are looking at that, and what do they think? The cop walks by there every day. Oh, they must be on the take. So it actually went backwards. It's and the way that you had to address it at that time, they felt they wanted supervision. So let's say I know, hey, there's a place they're selling nickel bags of pot on my post. You fill out an intelligence report. It's a form. It goes to the sergeant. He reads it. He signs it. He sends it into the lieutenant in the precinct. He signs it. He forwards it to the borough. The borough checks it. They sign it. They forward it to headquarters, OCCB, Organized Crime Control Bureau. They forward it to narcotics. Narcotics forwards it out to the Queens Narcotics. And, 6 months later, they send a unit over to check on that location. You know what I mean? It's they were just trying to avoid any corruption at all, which led to major problems, a lot of stuff.
One time I went into work, and they go, you got to go up to Randall's Park, up in Randall's Island, up in by the Bronx there. And you're going to assist on some raid that they're doing. So, I don't know. We go up there, 6 or 7 of us, in a radio car. And they came around, and they moved us. You get out of this car, get in that car with 2 strange cops, right? That's it. They did that to everybody. You get out, go in that car. You go in this car. And then we did raids of all the numbers joints.
Yeah.
And no arrests. We were taking the plexiglass because they won't reopen without the plexiglass.
Right, yes.
They can't because they get killed. So all we did was go in, raid the place, rip the plexiglass out, and waited for a truck from ESU or whoever came with a truck and picked up all the plexiglass. All the way down Buck. It was 5 spots on this block.
Think about it. It wasn't just the numbers joints that had bulletproof glass. I remember I used to stop on the way home at a Dunkin' Donuts, and it was a complete bulletproof glass window, and they would put the food in a little tray that had to turn around.
Yeah,
I'm like, I kept saying to myself, this is a Dunkin' Donuts, man. Like, this is pretty bad. Like,
Pre-pandemic.
yeah. Well, either way.
They had it down.
I mean, yes. That's why we had no pandemics. Everything was behind bulletproof glass. No, it was interesting times.
Yeah.
And like I said, thank God that they did hire a lot of cops, because you needed a young infusion into the department at that time. You know?
Yeah. And then also about corruption, the 7.5 was in your
7.5 was later. Well, what happened was you got rid of systematic corruption, and then later on you had isolated incidents of corruption. So the 7.7 I was in, they had a major corruption scandal. 13 guys got locked up. The 7.5 I was in, they had a major. Yeah, I was a carrier. No, that was in the 7.5.
That black
they
cloud
had
followed you.
Well, I always escaped it. I'll tell you what though. When I was in the 7.7, now that was that's another one where I can tell you stories, and unless you were there, I guess the other cops say, it's bullshit.
Right.
That's the way it was. Bizarre, and it was crazy.
And what time period was that?
That was 1986. I got there in May of 1986. I got promoted to sergeant in 1985, November. I went to the 7.5 for 6 months, like orientation, and then my permanent command was the 7.7, which was like notorious as.
Oh, so you knew what you were going into.
Oh, everybody knew what I was going to.
Yeah. Did you say why me? Why'd they pick
Well, I
me
knew
and
why, because
put
I was a
me-
young guy and I had no connection to anybody. And first deputy commissioner who I was talking about before, who won his award, like I said, he passed away.
Right.
I'm just now, all right.
John, tell me when you went to the 7.5 and you had the cop did show up for midnight. Female cop.
No, in the 7.7 I was.
Oh,
yeah. And like I said, this crazy times. The duty captain comes walking in one day. He sits down. He's like, "You're not going to believe what I'm dealing with." We're like, "What?" He goes, "We got like the 8-3. They have a officer didn't show up for work on the midnight. And they tried to get a hold of her. They can't get a hold of her at home. She just got out of the academy, and this is her first command. So they're thinking maybe she messed up the schedule with the hours, and she didn't know." So he goes, so I sent, a sector car over to her house. She lives over in Brooklyn South. He goes, and the sector goes there, and they knock on the door, and some older guy comes to the door, and he's like, "What do you want?" And they're like, "Oh, we're looking for Diane, whatever, Smith." He's like, "She's up in bed." They're like, "Well, we're from the police mom. She's got to go to work. She was supposed to be at work." "What do you mean she's got to be at work? It's after midnight. She don't go out of the house." "She's not going nowhere. She's in the house. She's in bed." And the duty captain, they're telling the story like, What am I going to do? What do you do with this? Like what? He goes, "I got to suspend her." Or the father, he goes, "Can you believe it?" This is what I mean. Now, can you imagine those Vietnam vets who are there from 1960s? That's what I mean about it was a clash, but it was a fantastic time. It was
Right.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So wait, what happened? So she
I don't know because it
got
wasn't
to stay
my
home?
it wasn't my precinct. And,
funny.
he was just coming around telling the story, like about this is what I'm dealing with. I had another duty captain come in one time when I was in the 113, and he says, he goes, "Hey, same thing." He goes, "You're not going to believe this." He goes, like the duty captain has to go around every night on the midnight and check into every station house and sign the log and show that he was there, make sure nothing's going on, in addition to responding to anything. So he says, I got into the car with a young guy, and I said, "Listen, take me to all the precincts, Queens." He goes, "I hit every one of them." So he goes, "I'm doing my paperwork in the seat," and he would, tap me on the shoulder, "Hey, Cap, here we are." He goes, and I would go in, just sign the book and come out. And he goes, and he'd take me to the next one, and I would go in and, sign the book, and I'd come out and do my paperwork. He goes, next thing he taps me, and I go in the precinct, I go behind the desk, and he goes, I notice everybody's looking at me like, what? He goes, and I realized I'm in Nassau County 5th Precinct. He goes, the kid took me out of New York City to a precinct on the border there. He goes,
way out of
and
the
they're all
borough.
like, "Can we help you, Captain?" He's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "I don't know." He goes, "I'm just getting out of the car," and he taps me. "All right, I'm here."
even in the craziest times, did you always enjoy yourself, or did you ever say, "Oh, why am I here?"
Well, I could tell you in the 7.7, I was driving around. It was the only time I've ever been looking in the help wanted ads. 'Cause I'm like, it was crazy. It was really crazy. Yeah. And then I'll tell you what happened was 2 cops were wearing a wire, and they incriminated a lot of guys. They were robbing drug. It goes back to these are bizarre times. There was so much drugs and money in these areas. It was bizarre.
Yeah,
There was a storefront in 7.7. The cops called me. I was a sergeant there. The cops called me over. it was a storefront that just opened up selling cases of brand new crack vials and cases of baking soda, which is used to make. And they're like, Sarge, look. And I'm like, so I remember I called the legal division. I was like, hey, listen, they're selling, it's blatant that they're selling the materials to make and package crack. He's like, there's nothing illegal about it. Nothing. He goes,
right, standalone. They're just different
sell
things.
baking soda and crack vials.
Right.
They didn't do nothing. So anyway, so I got there in May of '86, and I'm there for the whole summer. And probably around September, I was working that night. I was working to 4 to 12, and I come in, and the PBA delegate is there. He's like, yeah, he goes, you hear what happened? He goes, IAB came in, and they went to Magno and Winter's lockers and emptied them out, took everything out. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He goes, I called over. I told them, whenever they need a lawyer, I called the union. We're waiting, standing by. So I'm like, oh, that's, interesting. So as I came in all night, I'm like, hey, you hear anything? No, we haven't heard anything yet from Magno and Winter. I'm like, oh. Come in 3 hours later. You hear anything? No. I'm going, I don't know, man. I don't think you're going to be hearing from him. So it turns out they had been wearing wires for 6 months.
Oh.
So, so I remember where I was when they announced the arrests, and I was standing there, and somebody had said to me, why are you worried? Because what happened was when the information got out that these two guys had been wearing a wire for 6 months. So now rumors, the newspaper got it, rumors started to spread. 1/3 of the precinct is going to be arrested. This is back in the crack days. So basically, Al Sharpton had a protest outside the station house because at that time they were going around putting red X's on crack houses because the neighbors, the community was starting to fight back against crack because it was so bad. And then they had a march on the 7-7 and put a big red X on the front door because it was a crack house. And you had to go to work through the barricades to get into work because it was...
Wow.
So, and so somebody had asked me once, why are you worried? Did you do anything wrong? I said... It's not that you had to do anything wrong. It's like if you didn't do everything right, you'd be in trouble.
Right,
So,
right.
And you don't know what, like 6 months, I don't know. Because the place was a madhouse.
Right.
I'm telling you, it was a freaking crazy place. I can tell you one story. This is one afternoon there.
Right. You're a sergeant, so you're responsible.
I'm like
sitting duck.
You know what I used to do? I used to go walk around, drive around in that precinct. I look at my watch. 1600. I'm at the corner of Eastern Parkway and Pacific.
Right.
Just if anything happens this way, I documented where I was at that exact moment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But I can tell you, one afternoon I was working there, like a 4 to 12. This is like the type, and this goes to the atmosphere of the city. A sector car comes on the radio, and I still remember the two cops in pursuit of a car, a green Chevy, like northbound on I think Schenectady. Shots are being fired. This is like 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and it's a busy street.
Right.
And all you hear in the background is brrr, 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 brrr. Guys, somebody's got a fully automatic machine gun hanging out the window, chasing another car with the police car chasing that car.
Geez.
Yeah. And it was like in the middle, like people are walking home from work, like holy crap. I don't even think anybody called the police. Well, I guess we were there, but
How many homicides would they have there in a year?
well, I know that the 7-7 was a small precinct, but they still had a lot. I mean, the whole city had a lot back then. But that's what when people tell me, "Oh, the city's in bad shape," I'm going, it's not as good as it was 5 or 6 years ago. But if you
Not as
look
bad
at
as
the
back then.
statistics back,
Right.
it's a crazy difference. Like in the 7-5, it was a bigger precinct, but we would get almost like 130. I'll give you a good story. I was at a trial one time, a homicide trial. And I had left the 7-5 precinct, so I had to go back. So I'm in the witness room, and with a bunch of cops and the sergeant, the squad sergeant's there from the 7-5. So I'm talking to him because I knew him from when I worked there, and I go, "Hey, Mike," I go, "how many homicides you guys end up with last year?" Because it was always a big number. He's like, "Oh," he goes, "last year we had 132, 127." And a detective next to him just leans forward with a big smile on his face. And 7 on a respirator. Oh, okay, all right. So we have 105. Yeah. But think about that. That was back in that precinct, one of 75 in the city.
Yeah.
All of New York had 300.
Yeah, right.
2 years ago. Yeah. We had 130 in our
In
precinct.
just the precinct,
in that
right.
area.
The Palm Sunday massacre
Was in our precinct. Before I got there, but that was 7 people on one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was, and actually back then you had the term misdemeanor homicide, which it was.
Yeah.
I tell people, and like I said, cops today, I know they might even believe it, but back then, if I went, I'm taking over the platoon, like a 4 to 12, you had to cover crime scenes that were out there. You had to send cops to cover a crime scene because crime scene unit hasn't responded yet.
Right.
So you have a dead body on a sidewalk covered with a sheet or something, and you send 2 cops over to relieve the other sector and guard the crime scene until a crime scene unit can get over there and take pictures. So it might be like 2 or 3 shifts. You know, like today in New York City, if a homicide happens, believe me, it's a massive response, which is the way it should be. You know, there's our temporary headquarters and there's detectives. Back then, it was put it on the list when they get here.
Right.
Get here. It was like,
remember, and it also was turning over. They had the like the cops in the 70s. They would make an arrest and go to court for like 4 days.
oh, yes, I know.
Sleep down there, and they all
in
had
the
their chairs with them.
In the 80s, it was similar to that.
Right.
Not as bad, but it was very. I mean, if, when I was working in the narcotics unit in Queens, you'd go to central booking, and sometimes 16 hours, 20 hours, depending on if the computers went down. Like it was, because you know what it is. It's not complex, but you take your prisoners, you go to central booking. You have to lodge your prisoners in the cell. They have to be fingerprinted. They have to be photographs there. Then after they're lodged and everything's done, they take custody of your prisoner. Then you go upstairs. You have to talk to the district attorney and tell him what happened, and he goes through the law and what they can be charged with. Then just before it was the infancy of computers. It was 1983. So they'd have to give it to someone to type. It would be typed up on like a 5-copy.
But John, when you saw the district attorney, I remember going to Manhattan, and I think I made my first arrest in the end of December. And for Manhattan, the arrest number was like 113,000 just for Manhattan. So, but what's hard to believe is the ADA will be writing up your complaint, and like right in the middle of a sentence, put down his pen, like his shift was over.
Oh, new guy.
Yeah, just stop. and the new ADA would come in to start, and he would pick up the pen and start the rest of the sentence.
Yes, all right.
Right, and then they give it to you. And they go, now you got to get it typed. And you go into the room, there'd be like 30 typewriters with one typist with papers stacked up
You
next
just put
to
it on the top, put it on the stack, yeah.
Right. And if you were friendly with her, she could keep you there all
Yes,
night because she would just
yes.
keep moving it.
Yep.
Right. And it would be like, if you were in a rush, forget about it. Like we used to say, if you had to go to a wedding on a Friday, you better not get involved with the courts after Wednesday.
Yeah, because you don't know.
You could be
like
down.
I said, I've been in there and then after it's typed, you have to wait for them to type it. You hand it in, it's all handwritten by the DA, gets typed. Then you have to review it. If there's any mistake, like it was road and not avenue, that completely wipes it out. Okay, cross it, it's got to go back, put it back on the stack, got to go through again. She makes the correction, then sends it back out, then you review it again.
Oh my goodness.
It's before computers.
Right.
It's all like hand, paper. But
Could you imagine what they did before typewriters?
and and like I said, in crime, city, like I said, Manhattan, everywhere was going crazy.
So here you are at 25,
In
maybe?
85,
In 85. How old were you then?
24.
Okay, so you're 24 years old. In that kind of environment, in that world, in your opinion, do you think a 24-year-old cop today could handle what you did back then?
No, but I think it's a completely different job now.
Policing. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes, I do agree on that.
Oh, let me tell you, it was just, I can't, it was, I don't know. It was like I said, I don't know because it was complete. Like I said, like we were talking before,
Yeah.
there was no computers, there was no handheld things. It was like it was a little bit rough and tumble, and it was almost. And I'll tell you, even if you ask people, this is what I was thinking about even before I came on here. Anything I say about any of these neighborhoods and everything, the people there know it. I'm not saying anything bad. It's just this is the way it was. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And it was a shame. And I was so happy when it got so much nicer. But back then, it was freaking crazy. You know what? I remember.
It was like the Wild West going out on patrol.
Oh, I tell you want to hear one shift? I use this story for all the time when I talk about how the city was back then. This was one 8-hour shift. I leave the state. I was a sergeant, but I used to drive because I know where I want to go, so I don't want to sit there and tell the guy, "Oh, make a left, make a right." So I would drive. So I had a young rookie with me. I leave the station house on Sutter. I make a right. I go down a few blocks. I make a left. I'm going to get coffee for 4 to 12. And traffic is backed up like to Atlantic Avenue. And a guy coming the other way flags me down. He goes, "Hey, something's going on up on the corner." So I'm like, all right. So I flip the siren on and we, the lights on and we pull out in opposing traffic. And I get up to the intersection, and there's a guy there stabbed about 12 times in the middle of the intersection.
Wow.
But there's a group of people around, and an ambulance had already stopped. So they're treating the guy. And so me and the cop get out, and we're standing there. And all of a sudden, a guy comes walking over to me. He goes, hey, Sarge, he goes, that's the 4 guys that did it right there walking down the street. I said, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, they robbed the guy. He goes, and they, stabbed him. He goes, that's them right there. So they're like 2 blocks away, walking on the left side of the street. So I tell the cop, I go, jump in the car. So he jumps in the car. I go racing down Atlantic. I jump the center divider, and I get them right before they turned the corner. Because you know why? It was an unusual thing back then. They wouldn't run until they were out of sight, right? They're walking along the sidewalk, and then if they turned that corner, odds are you might find like 4 T-shirts because they would take off their shirts. But they still. So I cut them off right before they got to the corner. So put them up against the wall. One guy still got the bloody knife. One guy's got the victim's wallet. So we lock them up. We go to the station house. So we're there at the station house. The Central's calling me, 7-5 Sergeant, we got a man shot up the north end of your precinct. We got nobody to respond. So I grab another cop. I said, you can come with me. I said, we got to go up to a shooting. I get up to this apartment. It's like on the 2nd floor. There's an apartment door. It's open. There's a guy standing. I go, what happened? He goes, the guy inside got shot. So I walk in the apartment. There is blood everywhere, everywhere. I never really saw as much blood. And the place is a little ransacked. And I'm looking around. I don't see the guy. So I open up a door. It's a bedroom door. There's a guy sitting on the floor on my left, completely naked, covered in blood, covered. So, and every day I say, like, I testified at this homicide trial. So I said to the guy, I go, what happened to you? He goes, oh, the motherfucker shot me. I said, you got shot? Where'd you get shot? And he goes, he shot me here, shot me here, shot me here, shot me here, shot me here. And so each time
you're pointing to your head, your ear, your chin.
each time is a bullet hole in his head. Every time he pointed was a bullet hole in his head. His forehead, his right side above the ear, his back of his head, his jaw. So I turned to the guy with me. I go, holy shit. I go, this guy's got 5 bullet holes in his head. So I said to the guy, I go, who did it? He goes, don't worry about it. I'll take care of this myself. I said, listen, I go, you're not going to take care of this yourself. He says, you think I'm going to die? I said, yeah. I go, I'm pretty sure. I go, you got 5 bullet holes in your head. You better tell me. Oh my God. So he told me the whole story. Yeah. Guy Pete lived around the corner. He knocked on my door. There were 2 other guys. They came in. They were trying to rob him. They're looking for money. And every time I told him I didn't have money, they kept shooting me. So this is what I'm talking about back then. The ambulance comes. We put him in the ambulance. I leave the apartment house. A sector car pulls up. I give him the keys. I give him the short story of what happened. I said, take the keys, go back to the precinct, notify the detectives. It's probably going to be a homicide scene, and the door's locked. So whenever they can get here, it's secured. Because guess what? They're calling me to go to the other end of the precinct because I got a man stabbed again.
Right.
So I go down to the other end of the precinct, and there's cops there already. And I said, what's going on? They go, the guy inside is stabbed. But he doesn't want to, the perpetrator's still there, but he doesn't want her locked up. And, so I'm like, all right. So I go knock on the door. This guy, he's huge. He opens the door and he's like, what do you want? And I say to him, I go, listen, you have to go to the hospital. He goes, why do I gotta go to the hospital? I said, because your intestines are hanging out of your stomach. I said, they're literally hanging out of your stomach. Yeah. I go, as I'm talking to you, they're looped around your knee. I said, you really have to go to the hospital. He's like, oh, I don't want nobody arrested. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. Let's get you to the hospital. So, and it's funny, we put him in the ambulance, and then he had his girlfriend at the time, and the cops are like, well, what do you mean? We're just going to leave? I'm like, no, we're not going to leave. I go, but I don't want to get involved in a fight with this huge guy with his intestines hanging out. Let's get him out of here. I said, now we go back to the house. And we knocked on the door and locked her up. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
But at least you get that guy out.
But actually, this worked out. When I went to trial for the homicide, did I tell you this one?
Yeah.
With the memo book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, tell.
I ended up going to trial on this. And the defense attorney had me for doing a shipshod job. Did you do a search for evidence? I was like, no. You didn't do a search for evidence? I said, not at all. You didn't think it was important to do a search for evidence? I said, no. And what happened? They wouldn't allow that guy's statement that he made to me into evidence. Because technically it's hearsay because he lived for a couple of days. So they wouldn't allow a dying declaration. So he's going on, so you're telling me you were in this apartment and you didn't think it was important to look for evidence. I was like, no. He goes, what did you do? I said, I searched for my protection and I, found the victim. And how long were you there? I said, 10, 15 minutes. You were there for 10, 15 minutes. What were you doing? I go, I was talking to the victim. And the judge slams the gavel down and goes, oh, you just opened the door because now everything that I told the cop that the guy told me that can now be entered. So he sits down, then the prosecutor gets up and he's like, you had a conversation with the victim? I said, yes. Did you ask him any questions? Yes. Did he answer your questions? Yes. I couldn't say what he said, but I could say that I had a huge conversation. He answered my questions. I understood him. Then they immediately referred to the complaint report and said, okay, here's the information. Now we know where
And you
it came
confirmed
from.
everything?
Yes. So what happens, I leave the courtroom and I go back to the precinct. And what happened was I didn't bring the correct memo book, which you have to make your entries in it. So they told me when I was leaving, just fax it over, make a copy and fax it over, and we'd enter it into evidence, and the defense attorneys already agreed to that. So I was like, all right. So I go back to the station. I was like, copy it. I send it over. And next thing you know, the phone is ringing. Oh, the defense attorney wants you back on the stand. He wants you back on the stand. He goes, I don't know why. So I'm like, all right. I go, all right, let me go back over. So I go all the way back over to to the court. And I said to the DA, I go, I think I know what it is. And I told him, I said, here's how I would approach it. So I go back on the stand, and the defense attorney's got my copies of my memo book, and he says, could you show us the entry for the job, for his guy for murder? Yeah. I said, yeah, 1900, 1034, man shot. The address, blah, blah, and then 1097H to the hospital, patient to the hospital, 93 Charlie, complaint report, sector Charlie on the scene or whatever. He goes, so you testified you spoke to the victim. I said, yeah. You didn't think it was important to write any notes? I said, no. He goes, you're telling me that you had a conversation with the murder victim and you didn't think it was important for you to jot that down anywhere on the back page or anything? I said, no. So he goes, well, I can't believe that, that you would think that if you're telling us, you want the jury to believe that you had a conversation and you took information and you didn't even write it down anywhere. No. So he gets down, and then the prosecutor gets up, and I told the prosecutor, so he goes, Sergeant, he goes, what call did you have immediately before this one? I said, I had a pickup of a man stabbed. I said, we arrested 4, transported to the precinct. The victim was taken to the hospital, and property was recovered, a knife recovered. He goes, how many lines did you use? I said, 3. He goes, what call did you have immediately after this one? I said, I had a man stabbed. I said, we transported him to the hospital. I said, we arrested the perpetrator, recovered the knife. He goes, and how many lines did you use for that? I said, 3. He goes, is it safe to assume that you only always use 3 lines? I said, that's all I ever use. That's always.
I thought I had to go to civil court on an auto accident. Guy got killed in a car accident. So it was a big deal to get me to go to court. Like they had a...
Wait, from where? From...
I was in Nassau, and it was an auto accident in Nassau, but the case was in Queens Court, civil court.
Okay.
So I go into the courthouse, I sign in, and they call me as a witness. And I get on the stand, and they said, tell us your name. And I said, William Costigan. William Costigan. What's your rank? And before I open my mouth, one of the lawyers goes, I object. So there's like 5 lawyers there talking, right? On the for a civil case,
right?
So they're talking back and forth, and he goes, "Okay, what's your rank?" I object. Another one says. So the judge is like, "Hold on, what you're gonna have to do here is to get him." So they go to the judge, says, "Tell him your rank." I go, "Police officer." He goes, "Okay. Were you on such and such a street?" "Oh, I object." So I sat there for about an hour with them trying to figure out how they could get me to tell the story without one of the other lawyers objecting.
Oh, it's a game.
Yeah, and I sat there for an hour. I didn't say a word. And the judge says, just stay where you're sitting. And they were just going back and forth. And they go like, "Were you working on such a..." I object. All right, hold it. "Where do you work?" I object. And I was like, okay, he can step down. But this is not going any further.
Would you say for every 6 months you did fighting crime, you were 6 months on the witness chair?
No. Actually, even I worked in that narcotics unit for a year, and we made a lot of arrests, and that was a lot of court cases, which leads me to another story. But
did you enjoy that?
That was fantastic.
Oh, really? You liked it?
Gosh, that was think about it. You're 22, you got a gun, you're running around catching bad guys, and like chasing people, and yeah, it was fun.
And you get to testify in court.
Well, testifying in court, what happened was because it's narcotics, they always bring you to court for the MAP hearing and the Huntley hearing. The Huntley hearing, I think, is for the statements.
Is that for evidence?
And the MAP hearing is for evidence. So,
Okay.
because if they can throw out the evidence, the case is gone. So they don't even have to go to trial. So they'll always, challenge the evidence. And then so you go to a hearing for that. And you always go to grand jury, which was, that was just in there, tell what happened. I mean, you don't happen, I hate to say it, but after you're doing it for a while, you just get the rote statement, you know.
Yeah.
Time, place, occurrence, perpetrator was standing on a corner. I saw what he appeared to be, you know, commonly used.
Boilerplate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. You know, because the grand jury, that's all they want to hear. Okay,
Right.
go, okay, indict. But, and that, there was I don't get all my good stories out, though.
I have a feeling, John, we're going to go to part 2, perhaps 3.
I got a lot of notes. No, you know why? Because when I was, and like and I'll emphasize, absolute, all true. This was, so we used to go to the court so many times. I was working in a narcotics unit. So it was a little precinct narcotics unit, 4 guys. But, and actually it was called, what happened was the department trying to get the police, local police to address narcotics again for the first time. So it was a little pilot program and special narcotics abatement program, I think, SNAP unit. So it was 113 SNAP. So 4 of us in the unit. And it was actually the unit that, if you remember the stun gun scandal, stun gun incident in the 106 precinct, that was the SNAP unit over there. So, yeah, because you know why? They implemented this program with no guidelines. Everybody winged it. And it was fun. I mean, and we were doing well, you know, but
Until it gets serious.
Oh, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
There was a lot of ways for that to go off the rails.
Yeah.
I was like, remember because that was like a big change on the job when that happened, the stun gun thing.
Oh, yeah.
Came
It was
out.
alcohol no longer in the
Right.
precinct.
And then remember the sergeant plowed down the
Sherman.
guy on
Arthur Sherman.
Sergeant.
Night before St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Another big change.
Oh, I know.
Wait, what did
Well,
you do? What
I
did he?
thought I was in the car with him.
Well, tell the
next
story.
day when I was
Oh, well, it's a tragic story. A guy, like, was part of the police department, you know, the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Yeah.
So the preparation for that includes, there's a lot of preparation for things like a parade in New York City. One of those is the day before, the night before, they'll send a detail of cops and sergeants to that location, the parade route. They'll assign one guy to, like, I don't know, 10 blocks or something. You got to get all the cars out of here. Make sure there's no parked
parking
cars for
signs.
tomorrow morning. You know, so have tow trucks respond, and then you got to keep it clear till the parade. And this guy was drinking the whole night, the sergeant, and so
from the Bronx.
from the Bronx, yeah, because nobody's out watching, and he killed a guy on the way home. Yeah, so it was it was bad.
He killed the guy. He had rookies
And
in the
kept
car
going.
with him, and he drove back to the station. I was signed off like nothing was wrong.
Yeah, and when they
Did
found
he
the car.
realize what he did?
Oh, he was wasted, and I don't know.
Oh, boy.
There was a
It wasn't good.
no, but it was a big drinking culture in the department.
Right, but when you go into work the day after something like that, you literally think you had something to do with it because they just the hammer falls. Like when the 106 thing happened, they start inspecting cops that turn out and you take that pin off and you take this off and you're not allowed to have your hair and it's like you felt like you were part of the scandal.
Yeah, well, they're always trying to cover their bases after the fact. And they do, I'll tell you the truth, I'll give them credit. The department, they change with the times. They do change. All right, hey, we can't have this happen again. You know, we have to stop this.
Always for a short time post scandal, it's very hot. And then when does it go back?
Yeah, but you'll see procedures change. You know, and even not even like police corruption, but even like incidents in the city when, like I was in the 7-5 precinct when I think it was Michael Griffith got killed on the Bell Parkway. He was chased by a white group from Howard Beach.
Right.
And he got killed on the Bell Parkway. I came to work the next morning, and that was actually like on the border of our precinct and the 106.
I remember that trial.
Yeah, I mean, it was a major incident, but up until that time, the department never tracked like bias incidents. So like they started a whole brand new procedure now. If anything happens and we think it's a bias incident, we got to maintain a log. We got to notify. You know what I mean? Like.
So it helped. It helped evolve.
Well, yeah,
policing.
exactly. You know, it was always evolving. You know?
Yeah, but in the 106 scandal, I remember it went all the way to the chief of Queens. He lost his job.
Oh,
like they cleaned house from top to bottom.
Hey, the 7-7 scandal, that was big. That was, like I said, 13 guys got locked up. Hey, like I said, I was
Everybody got transferred, I think, right? Everybody in the precinct was transferred?
Yeah. I go to work one day. Well, I mean, everybody knew because, like I said, the rumors were crazy. They lock up 1/3 of the precinct, and 13 guys are locked up, and another 30 guys are going to lose their jobs.
But were guys turning on each other?
Well, the 2 guys turned with the wires.
Yeah.
They gave up everybody. And, I mean, these guys were...
They had been arrested 6 months prior.
Yeah, they caught them, in a sting, brought them in, told them, you're going to prison for 20 years, each of you, unless you help us and wear a wire. And they were like, okay. The gun guy, Tony Magno, was there for, 20 years in that precinct.
He was the PBA guy, right?
No, the Midnight guy was the PBA guy. Tony Magno and Henry Winter. Tony Magno was one of the partners. He was there for like 20 years. So he wasn't in my squad. He might have been in my squad. Well, what happened was they took Henry Winter and sent him to anti-crime upstairs because they felt that there was anti-crime issues going on. And Tony Magno stayed on patrol. So I had guys coming up to me saying, "Hey, Sarge, Tony's drunk the entire shift. You know, he's wasted. You know, he's talking to himself in the car." So I'm like, all right. So I would have him drive me because you know I'm like, all right, Tony, drive me. Yeah, and he'd be driving around like, "Yo, Sarge, you don't understand." And he's wearing a wire at this time, Right. But he, So what happened was when they threatened them with 20 years or whatever in prison, they came and testified, and so But a lot of guys got locked up from that. But I'll tell you what, a lot of guys got it thrown out that it was actual bullshit. Guys came back on the job.
And I don't think anybody actually did more than like 5 years in that. Like,
no, exactly.
They were all out.
Yeah. But it was scandalous. It was I left there. What happened was they came and the Sergeants Benevolent Association came and they're like, all right, all the sergeants are getting transferred on Wednesday. Like that's it. What do you mean? Midnight Wednesday, everybody's transferred and you go to a new precinct.
Not knowing where you're going to
Well, then they start telling us and they go, and we want to emphasize nobody's being punished. Nobody's being punished. So they give me mine. They said, you're going to the 9-0, Williamsburg. So I went up to him after. I go, why am I getting punished? He goes, nobody's being punished. I go, well, now I got to travel another 30 minutes to work. I said, that's punishment. I go, I was 40 minutes from work. Now I got another hour, another half an hour, 40 minutes. So I remember the guy saying, well, where do you want to go? I said, the 7-5, back to the 7-5. So I remember that one guy turns to the other guy and goes, well, it's not like he's asking for Queens. So I ended up doing a mutual. I stayed in Williamsburg for like a month or 6 weeks and then left there and went to back to the 7-5. But funny story, like at the time, it was Ben Ward, I think. He proposed transferring every cop every 3 years. Yeah. Every cop in the city would get transferred every 3 years to prevent cliques like this from forming.
Back then, even today, you can't transfer guys in the precinct like to another squad without a problem. Like guys like where they work, they get hooked up with a partner or something.
And they base their shifts and everything around there. Usually now it's a 2-income house. So if the wife is working, the cop's working steady 4 to 12. The wife is a teacher; she's working. He's got childcare or whatever. So but back then it wasn't. But to transfer everybody every 3 years, like you basically once you're getting comfortable with the place, now you're transferred and you don't know where you're going. So the cop probably the last time they ever had a successful slowdown, where they stopped everything. Summonses, arrests. And I'll give you a funny story. I think it was in the 9-0, but a call comes over for a man stabbed, and the cops get there, and like I think some people had grabbed the perpetrator. And when I got there, like the ambulance was there, they're working on the victim, and he's bad. He's going to go out of the picture. So, but they got the perp, like across the street, 50 feet away, and a couple of cops standing around, and they got him cuffed. I said, who's taking a collar? And the one guy comes to me and goes, Sarge, the slowdown is going on. I go, the slowdown? It's a fucking homicide. I'm all with you guys on the slowdown. I go, let's be rational. It's a freaking homicide collar. I go, I don't think the PBA is going to have a problem with it. Right. Oh, all right. I'm like, come on, guys. Common sense.
I was working in the 112 when Sullivan shot Eleanor Bumpus.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm working midnight, studying midnights. I was brand new, and they go, I'm getting off in the morning. They go, where you going? I said, I'm going home. So they go, no, we're going up to the Bronx for a protest today. So we got a bus picking us up. So I go, oh, all right. So we get on the bus, all the new cops, brand new cops. So we're marching around the Bronx criminal court, we're screaming, this job sucks, and you suck, and the PBA delegate goes, all right, let's get a couple of guys on top of these cars, start knocking out windshields. I go, hey, man, I'm on probation.
Yeah, I don't need this.
Oh, my God. Well, definitely, John, we are going to have to go to a part 2 because there's just not enough
use
time.
Up, I only covered like 1/4 of my
I know.
notes.
So everybody got to tune in for the next part of John Costigan, NYPD Lieutenant Retired. And I like that it's a family affair right now because here we are with Willie Costigan, whose brother John is here, and also their other brother Kevin and Tommy were also NYPD, and even your dad.
Yes.
Bill was Lynbrook PD. So believe me, this is a family affair.
Nephews,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
And now you have 3 nephews who are the third and latest generation of Costigan in the police department. So it's a nice legacy to have because you guys are real blue bloods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But yeah,
and it's still,
well, the other thing
it's
is,
not as good as it was, but it's still a good job.
We kind of saw the humor in it. There's a lot of guys who don't find
Oh, well,
it funny.
that's,
Like
I tell you the truth, that's what I have a major problem with. I see guys talking about, like I said to you, I told you earlier, the guy, the job sucked, the worst decision I ever made.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I thought it was fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, I don't get that either.
No.
We have a friend who was a captain, and I always said to him, how great, you know all the secrets of New York. You know the best places to eat, the best bars to go to. And he goes, no, it's a toilet. I hate it. I go to work and I come home. That's it. As fast as I'm in, I want to get out.
I don't understand that.
And I felt so sad. I thought that was so
I
sad.
know. Yeah.
I just couldn't understand it. But at least...
Yeah, but that guy, he doesn't come home and talk about, like, guess what happened with this guy at work today. Everything is bitter with him. Like the whole thing is, it's a
lot
horror.
of guys, I
it's a
think,
horror.
are like that.
But,
And whether, I guess, based on your experience in the department, whether you, I'm sure some guys got railroaded. I know some guys got railroaded over the years, and they could be bitter. But
oh, sure.
but these other guys, come on, yeah. You know what it is? You make, you get out of it what you make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like it's the human comedy because you can just go to, like a quick funny story was I'm working with an old timer and it just makes me laugh to this day. He's just a nice guy in the 112. We're working at midnight and the guy worked. He was a pallbearer, department pallbearer. So very rarely ever came to work. So he happens to be. I'm in the car with him on a midnight and we got to go take a stolen car report. It's like 1:00 in the morning. And we go to his place on Grand Central Parkway, the apartment. We go in, and we go up to the apartment, ring the doorbell. Lady lets us in. He walks in, and he immediately unzips his coat, his outer coat, right? And it's the winter, so he takes off his coat. He goes, "Can we sit down and do the report?" So she says, "Yeah, come on, let's sit at my dining room table." So we sat down at the dining room table. I still got my coat on, and he lights up a cigar. And she says, "Can I get you something to drink?" He goes, "You have any wine?"
Hey.
You go with the flow.
Yeah.
And she's like, Red will do. And he goes, "Just a little something like take the chill off." Like a lot of guys wouldn't even think of that. Like it's a funny story.
Oh, I
it's like,
know. Yes.
This guy is classic. You know?
But you ever notice you talked to a cop today? They have no funny stories.
Well, you know what? I'll give you a reason for that. Well, not a reason for that. I think it's a reason why you don't see the camaraderie in the police department anymore is because of the shifts that they changed to.
Yeah.
Years ago when I came on the police department, which I thought was fantastic, it was a 9-squad chart, it was called. Mm-hmm. So you rotated around the clock. Days, 4 to 12s, midnights.
I remember when I first dated Willie, he was 4 to 12, 12 to...
Yeah, you knew everybody
Midnight,
in the precinct.
Yeah, because you rotated around with your
Yeah.
platoon, your platoon, like 10 guys?
Squad.
Squad. And you rotate with other squads. And, you know what I liked about it? Because every precinct is different in the day, the evening, and the night. It's all different stuff going on. The daytime, the commercial places are open and people are out and about. And the evening, you at the bars.
Believe it or not, I had said to, we did steady days in Nassau, and then I made sergeant, I went to nights. And I was telling somebody, you don't understand, on the day tour, the operators, when they give you a call, they go, "It's Al's Deli." Like everybody knows where Al's Deli is.
Right.
At nighttime, you don't know Al's Deli because it's not open.
It's not.
You have to know the address
Right,
of where they're sending you. I mean, that was like
And because,
just like a basic
you're
difference.
working around the clock, you're working with everybody in the precinct.
Right.
So everybody, you're crossing paths with everybody. You might work with one guy for 4 days, and then you're out, and then you see him again in a week.
But you knew the secretaries, the CEO, the
Oh, yeah.
bosses,
Yeah.
because you passed them all the time.
Oh,
What was the reason for the change? It wasn't healthy.
well, and also for guys' schedule. Yeah, it's not healthy, and probably probably to attract more people because, all right, you know what? You can do steady days. You can do
right,
steady evenings. And like I said before, if you got a 2-income family, and okay, the wife is working, the husband can do evening shifts, and
Right.
Yeah,
so the evening guys never see the day guys.
So that's what killed it?
Right.
Well, that kills a lot of the camaraderie. Now, I don't know because I haven't been on the job in 20 years. But
yeah, but they do like you go into a precinct. It's the Christmas party for the day tour.
yes, I know.
It
Yeah.
says the Christmas party for the night tour is at a different location.
Yeah. No, in the old days, you worked with everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Around the clock. And, you'd come to work. It was actually interesting because you'd come to work and they'd have the roll call hanging up. So you're working on the day shift was 2 squads. The evening, the 4 to 12, was 3 squads. The midnight was 1 squad. But the midnight had the steady midnight people. then there was some steady day people. So you would come to work and you'd go to the roll call hanging in the muster room to see where your assignment was and who you were with and what time your meal was.
Right.
Or what foot post you had. And then you'd go down and get dressed and stand roll call and, go and, so, this week you might do that with Tony so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then the next week you're doing it with Bobby, because your partner, if you don't have a steady partner, you're just hooking up with anybody that you can.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Gosh. I remember when I got called for jury duty and they were interviewing. I got over
Voidied?
the two.
Voidied?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was voidied.
yeah.
I got over 2 hurdles and we got placed in the box and I said to myself, "Oh, I think I'm going to get picked for this jury." And I remember they said we went to lunch break and they said, "Don't discuss it." So what do? I call up Willie. I'm like, "Guess what? I got a murder. It's a murder."
Get out of here, really? Oh,
I'm so excited. So I'm in the chair and I started hearing people stand up and say, "My husband works in Nassau County Police Department and I know some of the names."
Right.
So I knew some of the names that were mentioned and I'm thinking, if I say what she said, they're going to kick me off, but I wanted to stay. So I didn't say anything. So I'm getting vetted and he starts going into Willie, like where your husband's a police officer, because I wrote it down, where in emergency service, da-da-da. So, and he's like, "You don't know these people."
Oh, get out, really?
So I
Cold got
said,
it.
so I said, "Well, I may have at a Christmas party, but I don't know them personally,
Yeah,
and I wanted to stay."
Right.
So
I had
away,
out, gone,
Right, John,
It's
right
good.
after I retired, I got called for jury duty. And I get there, and I'm filling out the form, and I'm like, this is bullshit. I shouldn't even be here. Right? I fill out the form, and they call me like, get on the bus. I go, I didn't fill out the form. You can fill it out on the bus. You got to go to the court, right now. They need a jury. So I go to the jury, into the thing. So there's 24 of us. They're going to question 12 of them. They put 12 jurors in the box. The lawyer's going to talk to them, and then they're going to do it. So the second 12 were sitting in the seats.
Right.
So the judge says, "Does anybody know anybody on this case?" And he starts reading names. I go, "I think I was on this arrest." I literally think it was on the Long Island Expressway. It was a DWI. There was an auto accident. I go, every single one of those guys I work with, right? So what happens is when he goes, "All right, we're going to break for lunch now." So before we got to go into the box. And so I purposely went down by myself. I said, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be accused of taking. In the meantime, I hear one of the guys who got picked for the jury go, "My uncle is a cop. This is a murder case. We got to get this guy."
You're kidding? Oh, really?
Yeah, to the jury. I was like, holy shit. So we go back up and we get into the box now. And he goes, "Does anybody know anybody related to this case?" And I raise my hand. And the judge looks down and he goes, "Oh, don't open your mouth. Step out. Step out. Don't say a word. Step out." And he goes, "Don't even sit in the seats. Please go outside the courtroom." So I go outside. So one of the guys comes down and goes, "Hey, man, what did you use to get out?" I go, "I worked with those guys. I got a retired cop." He goes, "Is that what it took?" He goes, "I wanted to get out of here just like you did." He goes, "But I didn't know what you were using."
Oh, yeah. I don't want to.
I was actually upset. I wanted to stay.
I got thrown
But
off
they
a
kicked me
homicide.
out.
I got called after I retired.
Yeah.
And I got voidied, same thing, all the way down to the jury box. And they had my questionnaire, both lawyers. And I think it was the prosecutor walking by. And he's like, "Okay, Mr. Costigan, it says here you've been a victim of a crime." I said, "Yep." "How many?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. 100 maybe." Because if somebody assaults you, you're resisting arrest or whatever. I go, I don't know. Okay, I go, as a police officer, I was in narcotics and so made a lot of arrests. "You've witnessed a crime?" I said, "Yeah." I was in narcotics and everything. So then he asked the statement. He goes, "Now we're going to have witnesses at this trial." It was a homicide trial. It was a mother got pushed down the stairs, like in East Meadow by her, or not in East Meadow, Merrick by her son, or Uniondale. So he goes, "We're going to have witnesses on the stand." He goes, "And they're going to be testifying." And he goes, "And we're going to have police employees, detectives, also testifying. And are you able to give both of those equal weight, even though you know that these detectives have attained that rank through hard work and perseverance?" And I started laughing. And he stopped dead. He's like, "Well, maybe you know something we don't know." And that was the end of it. And I go to prosecutor, I think, through me, because I'm like, I know a lot of guys do,
Right.
but there are some other guys that don't. I'll hear them talk. I'll know.
We'll see. All right, so stay tuned for us to go to part 2 and more with John Costigan. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a multi-episode series. And I'm so looking forward to having John Costigan back with us to share some more stories of his days with the NYPD. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Behind the Blue New York. So glad you stopped by, and if you enjoyed it, please tap that follow button. If you want to send us a shout out, you can reach us via email at behindtheblueny@gmail.com. And please like and follow us on our YouTube channel and Facebook page at Behind the Blue NY. Behind the Blue New York is a production of Penn Street Studios. Podcast music, All Nighter, full mix by Brian New. Licensing by Stock Music. Please be sure to come back for the next episode from the Blue. And until then, stay safe.